YouTube, and welcome to Musicology for the People. Today we are going to delve into a very big topic for music philosophy. What is music? How do we define what is and isn't music? Now, many cultures throughout history and all around the world have had very different ideas of what music is. For example, in ancient Greece, music was anything that was dominated or controlled by the muses. So of course, this includes our modern Western concept of music, but also included physical art, philosophy, science, mathematics, poetry, dance, geography, pretty much anything that you get in your liberal arts education. While that concept of music might have been very broad, there were other cultures that had incredibly specific notions of music. For example, the Aztecs had terms that referred to different types of music performance, but they didn't have a term that referred to it all as one overarching thing. In fact, there are still many languages out there today that have no word for a general concept of music. Inuit languages, and many North American languages actually, have no word for that broad idea of music. Also, at least 9 African languages have no word for this either. But perhaps it's just our skewed Western perception of music that makes us see other cultures as having a deficient when it comes to this word or concept. For example, the Persian language has a word musiki. Please, by the way, excuse all pronunciations I have no idea how to pronounce things in Persian. But the word is musiki. If we spell it in English, it's M-U-Z-I-K-I, and this refers to not only the art of music, but also science. But they also have a word musique, or M-U-Z-I-K, again, excuse pronunciation, that refers to the sound and performance of music. But this term excludes music that Western musicologists would consider music, such as chanting the Quran. If you think it's hard enough to try and define music from eons ago, it's even harder to try and define music of today. In the 20th century, philosophers, musicians, composers really began to be challenged as to what a definition of music could be. A variety of definitions popped up. There was composer Edgar Varèse's idea that music was organized sound, nothing less, nothing more. When you listen to his music, you can see why he went with this definition. His compositions use something called a sound mass, and he really liked to think of his music as open instead of bordered by rules. He said that to stubbornly conditioned ears, anything new in music has always been noise. In this, he means that rather than hearing music, people just recognize new things in music as just obnoxious noise. This idea was further qualified by semiologist Jean-Jacques Nattier. He said that just as music is whatever people choose to recognize as such, noise is whatever is recognized as disturbing, unpleasant, or both. If you think that these guys are being a little overdramatic, I would recommend that you play some dubstep for your elderly relatives. They'll set you straight. Some other people try to define music as what it does or what it conveys to the listener. Some people say that music conveys moods, ideas, or even politics. If we go this route, then thinkers such as Fred Lerdahl would say that music is a language. This idea begins to get muddied when we think about music for music's sake, or absolute music, or abstract music. This is music that was composed to be completely non-representational. Formalist composers jumped on this bandwagon because they believed that music should be appreciated for its formal structure and technical construction rather than what it can convey and evoke in the listener. It is, in fact, the purity of music rather than the connotation of elements outside of music. This is all well and good, but of course it's not quite as popular with listeners. Even more people began to try and define music by what elements music entails. This includes instruments, instrumentalists, singers, performing spaces, etc. However, of course, there are a multitude, an infinite possibility of things that can be incorporated into music. And what elements are used in music varies widely all around the world. We can then extrapolate that music doesn't have to include all of these elements, it just has to include a selection of a few of them. But then of course we get people who like to mess with this idea, and they pick out a few elements that when put together make something not entirely recognizable as music. One such composer that liked to mess around with this kind of thing was Mauricio Kago, who was German-Argentinian. Cool mix. Kaggle wrote a piece called Con Voce for a trio of instrumentalists who wore masks and then mimed playing their instruments. According to the definition of just using a few elements of music to be music, this is still music, even though the audience can't hear anything. A more modern explanation of what music is that music is defined by social context. This is a definition favored by ethnomusicologists, such as my friend at Ethnomusicology Explained, and you can check out his channel below in the description. This idea claims that music is just what people call music, and it varies according to what the social context is. For example, people from Western cultures tend to think of a melody from instruments or vocalists with some harmony attached to it and that's derived from a diatonic scale, music. However, in Chinese folk music, which dates back 7,000 years, music tends to be pentatonic, and rather than being harmonic, it's actually heterophonic, which is where there's one melodic line that is played by several instruments, and they kind of do their own little versions of that melody. So now that I've probably confused you all quite a bit, I thought we'd play a little game. I'm going to play a clip of either a piece of music or some random soundbite, and your job is to guess whether or not it's music. Here we go. The correct answer? It's music! If you got it, congratulations! This is a piece by Krzysztof Penderecki, and it is the Threnody for the victims of Hiroshima. When you get a chance, you should listen to it. It is a harrowing piece. Alright, next question. The correct answer? Again, music. This is a very interesting performance piece by Mark Applebaum, who's a composer at Stanford University. Again, when you have a free moment, you should definitely watch the video of this performance. It is very unique. All right, number 3. The correct answer? It's not music. This is actually just a recording of some trains. And on to the next question. The correct answer is not music again. This is actually whale sounds. And actually, I might have been a bit hasty to call it not music. This, for all I know, could be their concept of music. Actually, it'd be very cool if we were able to communicate with whales and ask them if they actually have an idea of what music is, or if this is just them talking back and forth to each other. But here I am, completely digressing. Let's move on to the last question. The correct answer is, this is music. This is a beautiful work by Harry Partch, an American composer who is known for his microtonal pieces. The link is below, give it a listen. Okay guys, let me know how you did during this game. I played a version of it myself a few years ago, and I had a blast trying to figure out if this was music or if this was just some random recording. But it's a fun game, and it is a good exercise in kind of opening your mind as to what music can be to different people. Also, if you could, let me know what some of your definitions for music might be, and if you have any responses to some of these theories that I've thrown out. As usual, be sure to subscribe and share this video amongst your friends. You can also follow this channel on Facebook and on Twitter, where I post more than weekly updates that are pretty fun sometimes. Until next week, I dare you to listen to a composer that you have never heard of before and try and see what their definition of music might be. Musicology.